refresh.
So if you refresh that.
I did. I see this clownesque face.
It's loading. Member. It's loading.
Okay.
Should be live now. Yep.
Let's see it. Channels, perhaps. Playlist. So.
Our audio is working.
Good. Let's be. Where is the? I don't see it. I don't have to see it.
Yeah, hi everybody. We're Jesse and Walter from Energy Web here. There's a bit of a delay, as you can probably tell, between when we're talking and when it shows up on YouTube. We're gonna take just a couple minutes, let everybody else hop into the room, and then we'll get started. I will throw this link into the Telegram page for everybody.
We also do it in WhatsApp for me.
Sure. Okay. Well, hey, everybody, we already see some questions coming in. Again, I'm Jesse, Chief Commercial Officer of Energy Web, and I've got Walter here on the line too.
Hey, guys.
And thanks for joining us for our first Energy Web live stream. A couple of housekeeping items before we jump in. This is our first time doing a live stream. Walter and I were pretty excited about giving it a shot instead of doing the kind of traditional AMA format. So we're going to give it a go. Okay. If anything does happen in terms of the failure, IT issues, etc., we'll hop onto Telegram just as an FYI. And we're going to use the comments feature on YouTube. So we'll be doing our best to kind of moderate that and keep it all going. Also, we will take, we got a lot of questions in advance of this. So thanks to Kobar for gathering everything. We'll do our best to answer everything. Whatever we don't answer, we'll go ahead and collect after the fact and post it after this. This will also be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel for future viewing. Yeah, cool. So before we jump into the questions, Walter and I just wanted to have a chat about a few different things. I think, Walter, people are still getting to know you as being out here and talking to the community. And I think, how long have we been on this journey now? How long have you been with Energy Web?
2 years, Jesse. 2 years, Jesse. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, you clearly had a really strong enterprise background working at Vodafone, ING Bank, those other organizations. I feel like what we're doing here is just so different with Energy Web, helping some of these large enterprises adopt decentralized tech. How does what we're doing compare, if at all, with some of that previous work that you did when you were working with some of these large enterprises?
It's a good question, Jesse. Well, it does and it doesn't, of course. And but I deliberately said farewell to corporate life 2.5 years ago. I've in my career, I've been on and off having my own businesses. But when it was 2015, when I worked at ING, I got into touch with crypto, Bitcoin at that time, just before the earlier halving in 2016. And I was fascinated by it. So I knew when I would end at ING, I wanted to go into do much more with blockchain. And then I was so lucky that I got this call from Jules from the Rocky Mountain Institute. And yeah, so here we are 2 years later. I think where it compares is with our enterprise members. Of course, we are transforming or digitizing the energy sector. And yeah, as you know, on a day-to-day basis, we work with these large corporates and they need help. And it's great that they actually said, rather than inventing the wheel on my own, let's do this together, but through the foundation, through us. Where it's totally different, of course, is what I call crypto land, the other side of being in decentralized tech, the blockchain world. And yeah, I think that is unprecedented. So, but like I would like to say it, I'm old enough to I've also seen the internet coming, and the first application on the internet was email. I think this was in 1994-ish. There was no Google, there was no Amazon, there was nothing like that, and that's how it feels like where we are now. You know, so we've just started. Yeah. But I love it; it's great. But you've been around the block, Jesse. I know you've been fanatically trying to decarbonize already at Rocky Mountain Institute, but US looks a little bit like a mess these days to me, at least here from Amsterdam. So,
US is a dumpster fire right now. I don't even know where to start. Yeah.
How is it different than Zook, where you are now?
Just a little bit. Politics, fires, you name it. Yeah. But we did have one good thing happen, which longtime followers probably did see, which is speaking of this whole concept of enterprise adoption, right? For anyone on the live stream now, we will, I'm just checking out the chat now. And of course, people want us to talk about the Germany announcement with Dina, which we're really excited about. We'll definitely get there. We'll speak more about the Ripple and Energy Web Zero piece. I think, but just on this US comment, before we totally throw America under the bus permanently, there was something really exciting that happened that I think is worth taking note of. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is the senior most regulatory body on energy in the US, they issued this order 2222. And we put out a piece about this in Energy Web. And this was a huge deal. This order basically says, make it so that any asset owned by customers in the US can participate in the wholesale energy market. Which, if you look at the new Energy Web website, I think that, Walter, I think you saw it too. We just put it live. It says, any asset owned by any customer participate in any market. So this order in the US, it's exactly in the spirit of what you and I and the rest of the team have been working on. Yeah,
it's amazing. I agree. And, you know, and I hope now the US really leverages strengths, you know, the can-do mentality, because in Europe we're still debating, but it's an order. Yeah. So I hope they listen to this order and, yeah, it's amazing. Agree. Yeah. All right. Lots of chats, Jesse.
Yeah. Let's jump in on Germany. Let's talk Germany. Yeah. So yes. And also one of the official questions I got ahead of time was, sprichst du Deutsch?
Das ist kein Problem. Wir sprechen Deutsch. Das ist kein Problem.
Ein bisschen Deutsch. Ja.
Ein bisschen, ja. Sicher.
We will stay in English for me, because my German is schrecklich. Yes. I don't know. What do you think? For me, incredibly exciting announcement, but maybe let's start with you. I think there's another question in here. There's that picture of you in Germany with a couple of folks, including Gavin from Parity. Maybe start there. So we'll talk broader about the Dina project, but what's the kind of relationship with Parity? What are we looking at there?
Gotcha. Yeah, so I think Parity, of course, always has been fundamental to what we do at Energy Web. At Hesse from Grid Singularity, one of our other founding members, like Rocky Mountain Institute, is very close to Gav and to Parity. They, of course, have a long history in Ethereum. And our client that we use today to run our blockchain is actually designed by Parity, including the Aura protocol, the Proof of Authority protocol. Actually, also Igor Barinov from POA Networks or now XDAI and Stake, he uses the same client, or he's developed on it. So it's been a very fundamental consensus mechanism that we used. And then, of course, Gavin went very busy with Substrate and later Polkadot and Kusama. And actually, lately, indeed, I was in Berlin, well spotted. Mark Kasia from Skytail Ventures, one of our members, took the picture. It's Corona time, so I decided not to fly, just to drive to Berlin. We had a great time there. And we basically reconfirmed our strategic intent. It's very important, of course, for us to continue to look at new technologies, whether it's ETH 2.0 or Substrate at Polkadot. And yeah, we're very happy now with this recent project in Germany, where we're actually going to build a testnet parachain on for Dina, but we're also launched our own testnet relay chain to really see how we're going to use these new type of technologies and governance mechanism for the future. Definitely.
Nice. Yeah. And so just to reiterate again, we're with this Dina announcement, just to answer a couple of the questions. It started now. So our architects, our engineers have already started working with a number of the partners on the project. We'll be providing updates on kind of a real-time basis as we can at the leadership of Dina, who's running the entire initiative. And yeah, looking at a multi-chain architecture for this project, there's some pretty unique requirements for the German market, mainly in terms of governance, so what the whole thing's going to look like. And so we're really excited to get our hands dirty with that kind of an architecture. Because clearly, if you look at the existing kind of version of the Energy Web chain, it's definitely capable of supporting the kinds of use cases we've been experimenting with now and launching now, right? In terms of identity management, proving the credentials about these different identities, and then connecting them to different pieces of technology to actually run energy markets. But I think we all assume that some sort of a multi-chain architecture is going to be needed if we have the entire planet or entire geographies running on a decentralized technology stack.
And I think what's good about the architecture is that it actually it works with parachain that of course have a dedicated purpose, and then a relay chain that is nothing else than connecting all these different chains. And of course, a parachain is not just a piece of technology. It can be a local economy, of course, like we are, but we're also going to experiment with having our own relay chain and then see how it interconnects. So very exciting again. I think we don't want to confuse our members, so we will continue to develop, of course, on the Energy Web as we know it with the Energy Web DOS. But then comes next year when the technology is more stable, we probably look at some migration scenarios or testing those out. So it's great. It feels like 2017 again. In 2017, Ethereum was hot and we were new with proof of authority. Now, of course, we all know the trouble on mainnet Ethereum and the scalability issues. We don't have these issues yet, given our setup. But yeah, we need to leap into the new wave of technology, which we do.
I think it's also worth noting kind of the real specific focus of our role here. So it is at this architecture level, like we're talking about, but really it's about this concept of a registry. And at the end of the day, if you go underneath registry, it's about identity. And for me, the really interesting thing here is if you look at what we're doing with ELIA and 50 Hertz, so transmission system operators in Germany and Belgium. If you look at what we did in Austria and are continuing to support in Austria, and you look at a number of these other countries where members in our ecosystem are active, this identity registry solution is very much the bread and butter of the Energy Web decentralized operating system. So we're starting to see some major repeatability of what is going on in these different geographies, which is super exciting from a mission perspective. You know, we don't want to build something in Germany that only works in Germany. We want to be able to get as many reusable components as possible. So anyway, I think that's probably enough on Dina right now. Super exciting. And we'll let the community know as we continue to hit milestones and make progress.
Definitely, and again, I would say it's as important for us as the 2222 announcement in the US. So having a whole country now actually going this direction and start to work with decentralized identities for energy assets, and also given the role of Germany in Europe, you know, this is definitely something we'll leverage.
Yeah, definitely. Great. So let's pivot a little bit and talk. So we were just talking about Dina. There's a number of questions on what came out the other week about Zero, Energy Web Zero. And
you're the Zero expert. Yeah, you start, Jesse. Yeah.
I'll start with this one because we got a number of questions about it. I'll try and be simple about it. And then Walter, you can help me kind of explain our thinking about applying it to a real decentralized kind of environment.
Definitely.
So anyway, yeah, let me clear up a few things. So Zero, what is it? It's a totally open source application built on the Energy Web decentralized operating stack. So it uses the chain, it uses Energy Web token to process transactions, et cetera, et cetera. The reason we built it isn't just about blockchains. The reason we built it is because we want to make it easy for energy buyers anywhere in the world to decarbonize, right? So the vision here is Zero turns into something like, if you're in the US, kayak.com. If you're in Europe, something like Skyscanner. So you go into this website, you say, I'm X company, you identify yourself, you set up some credentials, and you say, I want to purchase this much renewable energy. And that is a single kind of portal for you to go and then procure renewables from anywhere around the world. That's the vision for Energy Web Zero. Now, the reason we worked with a blockchain first is, just think about it. A blockchain is a big consumer of electricity. It uses a lot of electricity. So Ripple and the XRP Foundation approached us and said, hey, we're looking at taking a lot of progressive steps to decarbonize our entire footprint. How can we work with you? And so we said, hey, let's decarbonize the XRP ledger, right? So in this case, the XRP ledger was a buyer of renewable energy. And we, the way the transaction happened, right, is because blockchains are naturally decentralized. We can't say that this electron from this power plant was used by that node of the XRP ledger. That's not the way the physics of the electric grid works. So what we did is used Zero to facilitate a transaction of energy attribute certificates, is what they're called. So these are certificates that represent the green attribute of a unit of energy. And that is a method that's used all around the world to help corporates purchase renewables. We just applied it in this case to the XRP ledger using Zero. So that hopefully answers some of the questions about what we've done to date.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. So of course, what we basically said is, okay, if we're all into decarbonizing the electricity grid, let's eat our own dog food or drink our own champagne, whatever you prefer, and let's really start with the blockchain sector because they are big consumers of power. But if you just go through it or think through it and see what the possibilities are in the future, there's of course, we're also reaching out to, for example, Ethereum Foundation. We're going to reach out to a lot of the Bitcoin mining pools and Bitcoin miners. So if anybody in the community has good entries, particularly into Bitcoin, feel free to drop a line in the official AMA. We'll pick it up. But what you can imagine, for example, with exchanges is that there's a little bit of, or in MetaMask or an exchange that you can basically say, okay, I'm doing this transaction. Do you like to offset your carbon footprint, yes or no? And you can do this on any native chain. And so let's say MetaMask, there's a feature, you have your transaction cost and you just click offset my carbon footprint. And then we might group a lot of these transactions and then buy one certificates to do that. That's one also very good use case I can see in this decentralized environment. And the other one I think would be that you can actually get specifically buy decarbonized Bitcoins or decarbonized XRPs, of course, which is already the case now, given the action. And that might be very interesting also for larger corporates if they want to go and do more in crypto. At banks, for example, I used to work at a bank. They have green loan books, so they only do their whole lending portfolio, which hundreds of billions of dollars, is becoming more and more green. Hedge funds are actually only doing investments in green assets. And that's also where, if these large corporates are ready or funds are ready to move into crypto, which we start to see the first signs, I'm pretty sure that being able to say, yes, the crypto assets you're buying are provable green, that will also speed up that market. So those are just two examples where I think we can leverage what we do in Zero.
Yeah, if we really expect institutional investors of different shapes and sizes to start taking positions in Bitcoin or other cryptos, the questions they're answering now are clearly around what is a token? What is Bitcoin? Yeah. How do I hold this? What is a hardware wallet? Once those questions are solved, this is going to come up. They have strong environmental sustainability targets, as you said, and they're going to begin demanding ways to know that their crypto profile is, at least in some ways, decarbonized, because it's happening. Go away from crypto, it's already happening. So Zero is a really interesting kind of architecture to support that. And I think the other thing, it could be in an exchange, right? So you could see an exchange having some sort of a feature whereby a user that is purchasing crypto could effectively purchase enough clean energy to make whatever crypto they're purchasing green, is one architecture that Zero could support. Yeah, we're really calling out basically to the whole crypto world
whether it's exchanges or other blockchain initiatives, or etc., to help us on the journey and start decarbonizing what we do, because it just contributes. And we're heavy on electricity, at least most protocols are still, and let's do it. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, call out for ideas. We know that we can't decarbonize blockchains in a centralized way. Like we can't just call up Satoshi Nakamoto and say, hey, let's go. You need to make Bitcoin green. It needs to be decentralized. As you heard us talk about, we've got a couple ideas. Partner with exchanges, partner with some of these other service providers like wallet organizations. But if you have ideas, let us know. We are in conversation with a couple of other members of different crypto communities, but always looking for more ideas on how to accelerate zero. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Cool. All right, great. Walter, I'll kick a question over to you. Definitely some questions in the chat, but also something that we wanted to talk about in advance. Considering what happened a couple of weeks ago with the KuCoin breach,
yeah.
Can you talk just a little bit about our thinking on exchanges, especially given what happened there and the fire drill that kind of kicked off for the whole community?
Yeah, yeah. So of course, these things always happen over the weekend. So it was. I still remember it on the Saturday, and yeah, we noticed. We were very fortunate. It was already clear from very early on, because Wendell, one of our EWF employees, is based out of Colorado, and he was already on it, and I picked it up at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. But it was clear we were not affected, so that was the good news. But what was very clear, of course, that the situation we were in, with being listed on 3 exchanges, Liquid, Bitmart, and KuCoin. The KuCoin had the majority of the trading volume, and in these moments in time, when you actually see, hey, one of these exchanges is no longer accessible either to deposit or to withdraw, that's just not a good position to be in. I even saw a tweet on it, which I totally agreed with. So basically decided on that Saturday, okay, we need to diversify. We want to decentralize anyway, so that's why we're always on the route of listing on more and more exchanges. That hasn't changed, but we've basically decided to speed that up and really make sure that we go to a big number of exchanges faster. And that will be small exchanges, and that will be the larger tier 1 exchanges. But of course, the larger tier 1 exchanges are a little bit slower than some of the smaller exchanges. So we will continue to decentralize and really also de-risk it from that perspective. But what it also showed, and I really would like to address this to the community, don't leave your EWF tokens on an exchange, regardless of what exchange. It's not good practice. There was a huge amount of EWF tokens also in exchange. You've seen what happened. And I can't guarantee that if bad things happen, we can actually do what some of the ERC20s could do and just stop the contract. We can't stop a whole blockchain. So it's really, do your own research on what exchange you want to trade, but then also be very, very serious about how you do self-custody, buy a hardware wallet, and get them to your own wallets. It's much safer, and only leave on the exchanges what's within your risk profile.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Walter. I'm going to go actually back to the chat. There's a few questions that came up that I think would be interesting to look at that there are a few more we'll answer, but one is, what's going to be happening with some of these financial organizations as it relates to the work? There's a question on here. Is there a bank in the pipeline to act as some sort of a middle person? I think that's a pretty interesting question. I guess you worked at a bank, so of course we want to get your opinion. The only thing I would say is that we do have a couple of relationships with some larger financial organizations that we are partnering with to build out some really important settlement functionality for the Energy Web stack. And the way to think about that is, again, if you have a battery, if you have a solar system and you're using those assets to make money in the market, you're probably not going to get paid for that directly. It's probably going to show up as a reduction in your electric bill, right? Now that is about as boring and dry of a sentence as you can imagine, but there's a really cool tech behind making all of that happen, and we can do it in a decentralized way. So we will be partnering with some financial organizations to conduct those kinds of transactions, and we should be able to announce that in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, Walter, any other thinking on kind of the role banks play in our ecosystem in particular?
Yeah, definitely. So I think like you already said, we don't do announcement anymore, but something will be announced in the coming weeks anyway. And it's really what we said, if we want this energy transition to go faster, we can't do it with the energy sector on our own. And that's also why we did a strategic partnership with Vodafone for around the IoTs and the connectivity, and also the energy assets need to be able to settle. And whether we like it or not, banks are a very important part of our financial system. What the revenues in crypto, what is it, 200-300 billion is nothing, 0 point whatever percent compared to what's happening into the real financial markets. But these real financial markets are coming our way. So I think your car, your battery, your solar, they will be able to settle. It will be way too expensive to do this in the traditional way. So crypto in general, and particularly crypto combined with IoT and combined with the energy web chain, and then being able to do real financial transactions that are within the legal framework of a country, that's very strategic. And that's, of course, what you've been alluding to. That's one. I think secondly, what we also see, and that's more, and we're less involved in that, but there's definitely also a great interest from it, is that I already alluded on the green funds. And more actually green loan books actually that have invested in green projects, whether it's hydro or whether it's big wind farms or whatever. They want to actually see the real returns from those assets. So what I can also see, and we both know because we're talking to some, is actually some of these applications that will be built out over the coming years too, where investments in green assets will be tokenized, and then through our Origin platform, the real production of these assets can be monitored, can be proven it's there, and that then drives the business cases. So I think that's a little bit further away, but that's definitely also something that will become more and more visible, I think, when crypto becomes also a little bit more established in the financial markets.
Yeah, if there are any entrepreneurs listening right now, I would implore you to go and look at the application of crypto and actual finance to the energy transition. There have been dozens of companies that have come across Walter and I's desk saying, we're going to tokenize a renewable energy project, and then we're going to make it so that everybody can finance these projects, right? Very few actual implementations of that kind of thinking, of bringing kind of fintech to this space, in my opinion. There's clearly value there. We need a lot of capital to deploy low carbon infrastructure everywhere across the world. And there's an opportunity for decentralized tech to play a role. Frankly, we haven't had the capacity or bandwidth to try and do all of these different domains, but there's a lot of opportunity there for any interested entrepreneurs, I would say. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, and you can see it coming now, because there's of course the announcement that the first corporates are going to take Bitcoin as some reserve asset on their balance sheet. And of course, these are the entrepreneurial and the people with foresight. 2-3 years from now, hopefully there will be much more of that collateral in crypto. And then you start to see this coming to our sector.
Yeah, definitely. A few energy questions here. Maybe I'll start it with one for you, Walter, very high level. What DApp, this was from before, so what DApp do you expect to have the most spectacular adoption worldwide on the EWDOS?
That's a very good question. The most so for me, I think the real transformation comes from connecting any small asset to the grid and having it participate in any market of choice, whether it's a DSO market, a market that's done locally, whether it's frequency markets, whether it's a new market, Tesla doing fancy stuff, or Volkswagen, BMW, these guys. So I think that is just because then basically your energy asset becomes an investment. It starts to generate a return from you, and it's not just about consuming energy, but it's also about giving services back to the grid and then participating in it. And I think that will be so disruptive. This is what I've seen when the internet came in. When I worked at KPN Telecom, a Dutch telecom then, I was still very young, 25, and we had email, and we had one PC in the whole office, and all the emails came there. The secretary printed it out, and then the mailman handed the email out, and then you wrote on it, and that's where we are now. With so and if I can fast forward, if you have extremely intelligent devices, your fridge is connected, can participate in market, your air conditioning, your heat pump, I think we cannot imagine what's going to happen. So that will be really, really spectacular. And I expect a lot of AI and smart agents to actually take that away, that complexity from us, because of course trading in energy is boring. Who wants to do that? But there will be really good user apps to do that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think. Well, what is it for you? Because Jesse's much more an energy geek than I am, so he's in it for much longer.
I think you nailed it. I mean, I'll spin it even simpler, which would be the killer DApp is making it so that everybody in the world that has some kind of a flexible energy asset, it could be, again, an electric car, a smart thermostat in your apartment, so that you can make somewhere between, and I'll put a huge range on it, a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 a year, just by having this digital connection between your assets and the market. That's it. Which sounds a little reductionist. I know a lot of people in the crypto space are like full of all these different ideas and different dApps. A lot of innovation has to happen for what Walter and I are describing to take place. Don't get us wrong. But at the end of the day, it's about making it so that your assets can participate in the energy transition and get paid to do so. That's pretty cool, right? We've never had that kind of environment before. Yeah. And there's a few questions coming in about like people who actually have these assets right now, and they say, how do I get involved? And I've gotten that question a lot. I mean, I'm a good example, right? So we have an electric vehicle. We just got some solar, and I can't use any of this stuff on the Energy Web stack right now, right? Yeah. The reason is that one, market rules are changing, but they're changing at different paces around the world. So where, Walter's sitting, he can actually choose his electric retailer in the Netherlands and get a different deal. And some of those retailers may pass through some value to Walter if he has an asset that they're controlling, maybe. I can't do that in California, right? So it's not necessarily a technology barrier, it's a market barrier. What we're doing is trying to make it so that when these market rules change in different geographies around the world, those assets are ready to participate right away. So don't yell at us if your solar system can't participate in the frequency regulation market. We would love for that to be true. It's a regulatory and market thing. So that's why you see these announcements in different countries coming up, and change is very different speeds at different places around the world.
And the 2022 order is also pushing into this direction, no? It's actually an order to say to these markets, saying, hey, open up your market for the Jessies of this world so they can start participating. But I think we need to really push the regulator and also push the grid operators in a good way, I mean, because if we're investing more and more into our own energy assets, then of course they should participate. These markets exist, so it's just about enabling those markets, and then some of the returns can come back to you, and you can buy energy from your friends or from your neighbors or from an aggregator, or you can store energy at times when it's very cheap. And yeah, I think that will be the new normal 10 years from now. Again, we've just discovered email, and now we're talking about Google, and then you get Amazon, et cetera, et cetera.
Definitely. There were some other questions just to tie in some more on the spectacular use case. I would actually adjust my answer and give the same thing, but just talk about electric vehicles. Talk about electric vehicles. So there are questions about, there was a pretty interesting announcement with, I think, the Mobi consortium recently, who we are in conversation with. It sounds like a really interesting announcement. We're excited to learn a bit more. We are also in conversation with multiple automotive OEMs. Again, the point with our stack is making it possible for every automotive OEM, charging infrastructure, you name it, to be able to participate in these markets. And we're already hands-on there with some of our deployments in Belgium and Germany. And we hope to be more hands-on in more geographies moving forward. So electric vehicles, just when you do the math, that's the, lump all of those things together. It could be the world's biggest battery. If we're talking about a battery that you need for 4 to 8 hour intervals. It's pretty amazing. We've never had a resource like that in the world. So that's kind of the killer app for the energy transition. And then if we can connect all those things via EWDOS, that would be the killer DApp. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. an EV is basically a power plant on wheels, so it can move around the grid. So just to throw in a radical idea is, so if you're Uber, then your core business might not be picking up passengers and driving them around the city, but your core business could actually be picking up EVs and driving them around the grid to manage the flexibility. And now and then somebody sits in your car and you put that person from A to B. So if you really can start, because EVs have real good capacity and they can take care of the constraints in the grid, the physical constraints, because you just move them to another place. So yeah, agree.
Yes. And
OEMs start to see this, some more than others, but they really start to see this opportunity too. The car manufacturers.
Yeah. So really, we're big bulls on electric vehicles. So big role to play in the energy transition, definitely. Couple of other questions. Let's talk about the piece around staking that we've started to mention and the role that can play in the utility layer in a moment. I guess before that, a pretty specific one. Can you give some examples of real life use cases for the Energy Web naming service? What could it be used for in production? So just for context on that question, Energy Web naming service, if you look at the Energy Web stack, we have the trust layer, which is the Energy Web chain, the utility layer, which are a number of services that are needed to run production grade solutions. And then you have the toolkit layer. Origin is one of our toolkits, Flex is another. In that utility layer, one of the services is the Energy Web name service, which is very similar to the Ethereum naming service on mainnet Ethereum. The use cases there, again, I'm not a deep technologist by any means, but from an energy perspective, it's all about identity. So making it easy for enterprise users and corporate users in particular to clearly assign roles to different digital identities and to not have to type in a huge hexadecimal code, but be able to use recognizable language to associate a URL, in air quotes, to those identities. That's really what the primary use case of EWNS is. Walter, I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally. And again, think about Google coming into the internet world. Before that, you had to do all kind of difficult things. But also imagine that there are a billion assets connected to the grid, and you can easily search from them in an intuitive way. The whole and more we'll start talking about that more in the coming months too. But Mani, one of our lead architects, is building a whole solution for identity and access management of these assets. And so you need to give, if you're an enterprise, you need to be able to say, okay, this asset plays this role in my grid, and I want to onboard them in these and these apps. So that whole, let's say, what we call identity and access management for energy assets or companies building apps and using energy assets is also need the ENS, because that will be the place like Active Directory of Microsoft, where you make it all happen basically, but then in a decentralized way. So yeah, it's a key building block for. But it's a little bit, it's not like a very sexy building block, but for the architects amongst us, it is very relevant. Yes.
Well, let's talk about these building blocks, because they're not sexy, but they're fundamental to any enterprise grade solution running on this stack.
Definitely.
Right? And actually, that's where the staking model that we're starting to think about really comes into play. Because we've spoken about this a bit in the past on the AMAs, so I'll start at a high level. The thinking here is all of these utility layer services, Energy Web naming service being one. What's the traditional way of kind of taking down on a commercial arrangement some of those services? Signing a service level agreement with some external company to provide some level of uptime for some of these services. And when I say services, I'm talking about things like messaging. So making it possible for all these devices to send messages to each other. I'm talking about data storage. I'm talking about what Walter just said, actually managing the identities in a given ecosystem, the key management associated with those identities, et cetera. These are all services that have to be there. One way to deliver those services, and this is what our team is working on building right now, is to do it in a decentralized fashion. So we have the validator nodes at the trust layer of the chain. Imagine a second layer of nodes in that utility layer that are offering these different services, right? That's the model at the highest level before we talk about staking. So effectively enabling other organizations to come in, whether they're existing Energy Web members, whether they're other organizations coming in and hosting a node that's providing one or multiple of those utility layer services. That's the point, and just transactionally how it could work. Now, the point with staking is to actually create an incentive for those services to be as robust and reliable as possible at the highest level. And so that would mean for any utility node participant, so anybody providing a service, having to stake some amount of EWT. And I should mention most of the concepts we're talking about with staking here would be with EWT, not EWTB. That was one question that we got offline.
Yeah.
So for the organizations hosting nodes, for them to be staking some amount of tokens, but then also a pooled and or individual approach for all EWT holders to actually stake tokens against some of those service providers. At the highest level, that's the concept we're working through right now.
And it's very relevant in also going back to my earlier enterprise experience. So large enterprises, they want also guarantee of service or quality of service, etc. If you run the electricity grid in a country, then you're supposed to make sure it has a certain uptime, etc. So, and of course, the million-dollar question that we are answering with rolling this all out is, how do you do that when you roll out a decentralized architecture? So that's also why we said, let's start with the customers and the clients we know. So the large, of course, energy players of today, that's why they play such a vital role in providing the trust in a chain. But at the utility layer, it's, of course, when we are totally decentralizing, which we are doing, and if all the consumers around the world are buying assets, then of course they should have a role in the Energy Web decentralized operating system too. Fast forward a couple of years from now. So how do you then do that with people you actually don't know that can sit around the world? Well, then of course staking with economic value makes a lot of sense. The other very important element with that is that what it also does, if we're going to provide this utility layer and that has a guaranteed uptime, that has a guaranteed availability, latency, and certain other performance metrics, you can actually start to offer a service level with a decentralized architecture, with people that are economically incentivized to make sure the service stays up and running. That's exactly what a service level agreement is in the real world. It's then in a central model. And I used to do that at Vodafone, we delivered a service level agreement to customers around the world. And then I was economically incentivized or I was penalized if I didn't hit the SLA. Well, that's exactly what you do with staking at the utility layer. So you can actually implement through those staking mechanisms also quality of service at the utility layer level. So it's extremely relevant for a next step.
So that would mean almost like if you're providing some of these services or you're staking against an organization that's providing some of these services, you're going to be rewarded based on the level of service you're providing. It just happens to be decentralized because there's not a single organization providing it.
Yeah, so that in itself is already providing much better availability, of course. But so that's really good. But then too, and then if a node fails, of course, those that run the node and that are staked into the node, the delegators, they might be penalized. But that penalty then actually goes as compensation to the users of that service. That's an SLA. So it's another way of implementing a service level agreement. And we're definitely going to experiment with that because when we go to scale and real rollouts, like we are starting to do in some countries, then availability of service is of course essential. Yeah.
A DSLA, decentralized service level agreement.
Yeah, let's use that word. DSLA, that's a very good one. Yeah, it is.
Nice. Great. So more to come on that model. We have our very own Sam Hartnett, who I think some folks have seen. He's one of the leads strategists in Energy Web that's putting out a lot of the documentation you've seen, is looking at this very hard right now. And several of our developers and architects are deep in building the pieces of the puzzle. So more to come on that soon. Yeah.
I need to ask you a question too, Jesse. Are we already shadow banned or not?
Who knows? Who knows?
If we're not being shadow banned, we're not really doing a YouTube live stream.
Yeah, we're doing something wrong. Yeah, we need some more followers is the challenge there. Yeah. Cool. Let's see. A couple of other questions here. Let's see. And folks, feel free to dump more questions in on the YouTube channel. We've gotten through pretty much everything we're looking at so far with the questions ahead of time. A couple questions about Ocean and that partnership that we announced some time ago. I think I can speak to that at the highest level. And then Walter, if there's anything else you're thinking in terms of the multi-chain architecture and discussion around Polkadot, looks like there were a couple other questions there. Look, on Ocean, think about it this way. If Energy Web decentralized operating system is successful and you have eventually hundreds of millions of devices that have these identities, they're going to be producing an absolutely immense amount of data, right? And that data is kind of the new gold in the context of this new energy reality we're moving towards. Putting some of that data into a Ocean style data exchange could be very interesting. Already there are companies in our ecosystem who have been experimenting with entire business models focused on taking data, running it through some optimization to achieve a certain function, and actually paying for that data for the right to do that optimization. So for me, when I look at what Ocean is capable of, that's the point of the interconnection there is, again, all of these assets producing a rich amount of data. Energy Web kind of covers that. Once the data is created, where do you put it? Who do you send it to? That's where these kinds of data exchanges and marketplaces can become very interesting.
Definitely. And just to add to that, I think, and then also what it allows you is to really stay in control of your own data. So again, what Ocean, of course, does is the whole decentral approach. So it's all geared around the self-sovereign identity. So you decide who access your data for what and what you're willing to share, what not, and you can monetize on your data. So and that's how it should be. You know, I think the models that Facebook have and Google have will not be sustainable. Give all your data for free and get and let them monetize on it. So it will be the other way around. And of course, energy data is extremely private data. How you consume energy tells you where you are, what you're using, particularly if you have all these smart devices. So having a real good decentralized approach to how your data is being used and governed, I think is essential.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And Walter, anything else to say on I guess we talked about the multi-chain architecture. I think, look, on Polkadot, the Dina project is a perfect focal point for us because as people know, we don't really like doing research or building things in a vacuum. We want to build at the behest of what's needed by energy market participants. So this is the first case where we've seen a potential need for a multi-chain architecture. And that's why we're working with Parity. That's why we're looking at Polkadot, launching a relay chain, testnet, et cetera. So I don't know, there's much more to say kind of in that regard until we actually have started building this stuff and can say more about what it's going to look like. Yeah.
Agree. No, let's, it's not just the technology. That's the only thing I can add, but also, of course, the brilliant way how the governance is integrated into the technology, which again could simplify a lot for larger enterprises. But yeah, it's really, we strongly believe is that the learning is in the doing, and a lot of our members do so too. So we're very happy that we have some very innovative members that are willing to experiment with us, and of course also partners like Parity Tech to then go and do. And then when we learn, we will evolve. We see what we can use, what we're not going to use. I think being connected, staying close to the ecosystem, because a lot of like what Kilt is building, for example, on the Pirate chain as an identity provider is very relevant. There will be more very innovative Pirate chains coming up, and we need to make sure that we stay in that ecosystem and benefit from it for our mission and our sector. Yeah,
definitely. Cool. A few other questions coming in. We are adding validators, our team, at all hours. There is a significant queue. I think what everybody should remember is Energy Web Chain, I think, but I would love to be proven wrong, is still the only public blockchain where you have large regulated corporates actually hosting nodes on public infrastructure, which is just an amazing achievement of the entire community. That takes time. Right. We have to do a lot of work on all sides of the equation to help enterprise members get comfortable with that kind of a arrangement. So big backlog of companies. We're adding them pretty regularly, and yeah, excited to grow from 30 to up to 50 over the next who knows how long. But that's we're adding validators all the time. So
yeah. I've seen a good question, Jesse, on Energy Web and China. We were just discussing it prior to the call. So what are the plans for China?
Yeah. So China is super interesting, and we have been in conversation with a couple of strategic partners to basically bring EWDOS to market in China. The thing in China, unlike the rest of the world, is you have one large, totally vertically integrated utility called State Grid that basically manages the entire energy system. And in that kind of a context, there's no choice from a consumer perspective. So if you buy an electric vehicle, if you buy some sort of flexible energy asset, there's not really a path to having that asset participate in a market that's controlled by State Grid. But, bold, underline, italicize, but there's some pretty interesting market reforms going on in China. And I'm by no means a Chinese market expert, but basically in many geographies where new distribution grids are being built and or being kind of refurbished because the electricity infrastructure is very old, there's a new program whereby those local industrial parks or campuses or communities can actually deploy their own kind of architecture and market in that area in China. So that's where we're looking at, can we come in with the Energy Web decentralized operating system and overlay that grid infrastructure on these new communities in China where those kinds of things are happening. So pretty new development that we're exploring right now, but I'm excited to see where it goes in the next 12 months for sure.
Great. I see a comment from Michael on checking on Elastos solution. We will. I'm not aware of Elastos solution, so we definitely have a look into that.
Yeah. Oh, Walter, here's one for you. What 5 years from now? What is the kind of ideal from the technology perspective? Where do you see Energy Web? Where do you, maybe not the organization or the community, or feel free to answer that if you'd like, but really, where do you see us from a maturity perspective in terms of the tech?
5 years from now, well, definitely, I hope I'm using it myself so that my EV in the Netherlands is actually participating in a market of my choice. I think 5 years from now, that should be doable. I don't think we'll have it everywhere, but if I see what's happening in some of the countries, and also the time pressure, we don't have a lot of time. The world is not going very well. It's summer in the Netherlands, even during the winter, which is not good. And so I think and also the European Commission is pushing for more and more and more. So I think real application, definitely. I still think though that when it comes from a technology perspective, we're still evolving. So I think we'll probably have release one of the first application. Also 5 years from now, I would expect batteries in cars to be totally different and much more efficient. Let's be honest, the European car manufacturers actually only now start to produce EVs at scale. So that next cycle will be, 8-10 years from now? So a lot of innovation there. But no, we'll definitely 5 years from now, from an Energy Web perspective, we'll be definitely operating in multiple countries with real applications on our chain and a lot of millions of assets connected to our DOS. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 5 years ago, I didn't even know what a Bitcoin was. 2016, 2015. So yeah, I mean, spot on. I could envision a multiple nationwide implementations, probably, if I were to guess, in Western Europe, Asia Pacific, and North America. I think if we need to be able to pull off that kind of impact and scale, would be the validation that we're on the right track.
Definitely. No, and I'm convinced we will, because if you look at the traction now, then the question almost is why not? But how it will exactly look, it's very difficult to say. It's like, and I've been there in early 90s when I thought email was useless because I had to read it from a paper. And there was no concept, and not just with me, but even Bill Gates then, I think only later started to take the internet serious in Microsoft. It was quite late. There was no concept of Amazon or all these guys. So it's very hard to, I think once our infrastructure really comes to life in real use cases in real countries, there will be a new type of innovation that's going to be deployed on top of it that we can't even imagine now. At least that's what I hope. And then, it will be even cooler than it already is today.
Yeah, definitely. A couple other questions on the same theme of geographic kind of takeover and expansion. Which G20 countries are best suited to implement EW tech? Again, I would say most of them, and we're in conversation with market participants with all of them. The trick in emerging markets, which is the second question here, is we are active in emerging economies when we talk about renewable energy purchasing. So everything having to do with zero and origin, the killer use case there really is in emerging economies where let's go to sub-Saharan Africa. Let's go even to places like India, Southeast Asia. There is no market where a corporate can come in and sign a contract for 20 years of clean electricity. That kind of market doesn't exist. So what we're building with Zero is very good product market fit for those kinds of transactions in emerging economies. So we would love to be doing the flexibility and identity work in those same geographies. And in fact, with Rocky Mountain Institute, one of our founding organizations, they're very active in a lot of those organizations, a lot of those geographies looking at electrification. Yeah, exactly. The trick is we just haven't figured out the go-to-market for that kind of electrification strategy yet with Energy Web. So our focus there now is more on the renewable energy side. But again, Walter, as you said, that could be changing a couple of years from now, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also a question what we're doing in Africa, and at the moment not a lot, but we definitely want to go there. It's more like what you said. We, in that sense, we're a small team, so we really work with our members and focus our attention there, where it is. I think, Africa, we will be doing something there also next year for sure, because we got hopefully some funding coming in that's specifically focused on those type of geographies, and then we definitely go and do that too. But like Jesse's saying, if you want to build a microgrid in Africa, you can actually build it. They can leapfrog a lot of the legacy implementations. You saw exactly the same in telecoms. A lot of countries in Africa went straight away to mobile telephony and mobile data. They never had any fixed internet, and you can see this potential jump in around energy. If you don't have an electricity grid now, you might as well implement the future straight away. So it's definitely on our wish list. And again, if anybody on this call or webinar has good connections there, loop us in and we'll kick it off.
Yeah, William, on the YouTube chat, please feel free to ping. There's a contact form, or you can even give it a shot on the Telegram main thread, and you could ping me. Always looking for people for the go-to-market in these kinds of places. So thanks for the interesting questions. There was one other very wonky regulatory question that I just can't help but not. Somebody, this is a very good example though. Back to the California point, there is a program in California called the Distributed Energy Resource Program that was designed to do exactly what we always talk about at Energy Web, which is so my car can participate in the wholesale market. That system is not what I would call digital. It's not particularly efficient. You have to work through multiple intermediaries and it's pretty expensive. So whoever asked that question, those kinds of programs are exactly what we're working to kind of re-architect with the Energy Web decentralized operating system. So kudos to whoever asked that extremely wonky question. You've done your homework. Yeah.
Well, that's a compliment to the whole community anyway. It's really very good for me, but for Jesse and the whole team at Energy Web to see how you guys are committed to what we're doing. Also, the type of questions we're getting are really helping us also to focus. And again, you guys are the early few that really are involved in this transition. And 10 years from now, we'll be looking back on these days like, oh, that's how it all started. And so please, keep on asking these questions, keep on pushing us into where you want to push us. We're not always saying yes, but we definitely take your feedback very serious. And we act on it. We act on it. So thanks for your time and your commitment. That's at least the last comment I wanted to make, Jesse.
Yeah, no, I would echo that. Thanks to everybody for the questions and the engagement and enthusiasm. There are a few questions on here that we didn't fully answer, so we'll be able to take some of those offline and repost them. This video will be in the YouTube channel, but thanks again for bearing with us on this first live stream. Let us know your feedback, and we'll be in touch and scheduling for the next one soon.
Yeah, give your feedback if you like this format or not. Indeed, good point. If you say we go back to the AMA format, also good. You know, we like we said, we practice what we preach. So we just wanted to experiment with how would a live stream like this work. And if you guys say it doesn't work, then we change. If you guys say it does work, then we do more of them. So let us know.
Great. Okay.